I'd just like to know what those issues are.
You notice Ambassador Greer didn't enumerate them either.
They're doing it again. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got liberal pundits coming after Pierre again, making up wild stories to try to get him ousted. They keep doing this. This is not new. We've also got numerous indicators pointing that, well, Carney's not trying to get a deal with America. Now, anyone around here knows that's true, but we've got the Americans saying this. We've got Dominic LeBlanc getting pissed off in committee being asked about this. We got a bunch of stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we've got Shrey Teast posting this, the new Palace, Ontario polling data here for Doug Ford's PCs. We've got 39.6 down 5%, and the Liberals at 30% plus 4%. Also, the NDP resurging here plus 5%. So the NDP getting a little bit of bump in pretty much all the polling we're seeing after they got Avi Lewis as leader. We've got this one here also from Shrey Teast. This is German polling data. The AfD is the far right party in Germany. They want to basically lock down the border, deport people, you know, all that good stuff to fix the country. Pretty interesting. The AfD are now back in the lead, which you can see they are this light blue color here versus the Union, which is this darker one here. So you can see it kind of bobbling, and the AfD have popped up right there. It's hard to see, putting them at 26% versus 24.5%. Interesting times indeed. And we got Ezra Levant posting this. Yeah, that's right. He's sitting with Michael Maw. This is hilarious. The Spy Who Loved Me, a one-act play. Can I have a selfie? Sure. Takes a photo. What do you do here in Ottawa? I run Rebel News. This is awesome. Michael Maw is such a buffoon. Moving ahead, we've got Althea Raj here on CBC throwing out rumors that Pierre Poilievre is going to get ousted by his own party after getting 87% vote at the Conservative Leadership Convention. She thinks Conservatives are scheming to get him out of the leadership position. I don't buy it.
3 years is a really long time. Yeah. Already there are rumblings of people trying to organize a letter that would lead to the process of having a caucus vote that would lead to the process of potentially removing Pierre Poilievre as leader. And we've seen over the course of, well, his speech today, over the course of interviews over the weekend, Pierre Poilievre is telling his caucus he has no intention of leaving, and he is going to fight. Yeah. And then you have MPs who are like, well, I'm probably not going to run again, and I won't have a committee because the Liberals will now be the majority on committees, and they'll lose all these committee spots, that I might as well just pad my pension and not cause any waves, because I'm not sure that mounting a fight against Pierre Poilievre that you're not sure you're going to win is a great strategy. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the Tory caucus that will be worth watching in the months ahead.
So she says here at the start, there's already rumblings of people trying to organize. That doesn't sound so confident.
Rumblings of people trying to organize a letter that would lead to the process of having a caucus vote that would lead to the process of potentially removing Pierre Poilievre as leader. And we've seen...
What is this embarrassment? Lead to a letter that potentially lead to this, to have someone sign this, to maybe think about this once time and then do that, and then maybe to have a letter to vote on. Like, come on. They call this news. Why do they bring them on for this kind of stuff? If they're going to put this stuff out here, then say who's saying what. Otherwise, this is nonsense. There's recently been a couple panels here on CBC, which I'll show you in another video, but basically they've been not too kind to Carney. It's mostly Andrew Coyne, surprisingly. I wonder if they got a little tap on the shoulder and say, hey, it's time to go after Poilievre again. They're like, okay. You know, briefcase gets put down, okay, and off they go. This is embarrassing. They've been doing this, well, ever since the Apple moment, ever since Poilievre started rising up, they've just been attacking the guy. You know, if he is so bad in their mind, then why wouldn't they want him to stay there? They want to get rid of him. They're so desperate to get rid of him. They're scared of the guy. And speaking of Andrew Coyne, look at this. We've got a group of people here all lining up to hear Andrew Coyne speak.
These guys are waiting for a guy called Andrew Coyne, and he wrote a book about how Canada is not really a democracy at all. I guess we'll find out why that is. The way that the parliamentary system works, or just the governmental system works, it's just, there's kind of a ruling elites, I guess. So there's a lot of interest in it. I'm surprised. Totally, it's free, that's why. They came here for free.
CBC watching crowd here. Moving ahead, we've got David Cleto with this, a bipartisan letter signed by 40 plus U.S. senators urging USTR Greer, Jamieson Greer, to use CUSMA review to enforce existing terms and open new access. It's not just Trump putting pressure on the agriculture issue. Polling I've done shows protecting Canadian farms is high up on Canadians' priority list in negotiations. So basically, this letter here shows that the CUSMA deal with Canada is incredibly valuable. It says here, exports valued to 176 billion in 2024, but they want a better deal for their farmers. And really, this comes down to dairy. This is about dairy. And we know Carney's not going to budge on dairy because supply management is way too wrapped up in Lacasse here, this pension fund, which does deals with Brookfield. They have numerous businesses together, not to mention Lacasse here is an investor in Brookfield. I've got that highlighted right here. Brookfield Corporation, $2.1 million is this company, which is wrapped up in the dairy industry. Marc-Andre Blanchard resigned as the executive president, head of CDPQ, still has active shares that he can cash out in the next 2 years, which is broken down here. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars he'll make from CDPQ. If they open up supply management, the value of this goes down. And obviously, Marc-Andre Blanchard wouldn't like that. Quebec voters wouldn't like that, which is a strong liberal base. Obviously, they're not going to touch that. Now, does that mean we're not going to get a deal? Maybe. Maybe that's just it. We get no deal because this is so entrenched in the Liberals' ecosystem, they won't do it. We have this clip coming from Jasmine's podcast where she interviewed Pete Hoekstra, which is sending some serious shockwaves around the internet right now.
Conversations with U.S. counterparts remain productive and we remain engaged.
No, actually, it's not an intense negotiation. Okay, there really have been no serious negotiations since October of last year. With a smile and a smirk, they're proud of that. They're proud of the fact that they're hurting people in Kentucky. We want to resolve the disputes on steel. As a matter of fact, we had that pretty much resolved in October, and the Canadians blew that up. Okay. It wasn't the Americans.
He just admitted it. They haven't been at the table for 5 months, and Carney's team blew up the negotiations back in October when there was supposedly going to be a deal. This is a great episode here. You should check this out on Jasmine's channel. We have multiple things going on here with Pete Hoekstra admitting that they're not trying to get a deal. We've got this bipartisan letters showing that they want to get a deal, but they just want to get a better deal regarding the dairy cartel supply management. We've got mainstream media constantly attacking Pierre Poilievre. Here's another one. Poilievre has been taking shots at Carney, and for his awful track record, he brings it back to his education, or said he's poorly educated, and now you've got all these people, Christy Clark, going after him, which is kind of new. Christy Clark has not really been that supportive of Carney for the past year. I mean, that's because the CBC completely axed her on her first day of running for Liberal leadership.
I think attacking his education record is a beating a dead. Are you kidding me? I mean, the man has more degrees from the world's greatest universities than just about anybody I've met, and is attacking his record as the central banker in England is ridiculous. I mean, Boris Johnson took the UK out of Europe, which damaged their economy enormously, and in the midst of that, it was very difficult, I'm sure, to be a central banker in the situation. But he soldiered on soldiered on. He brought in net zero, and now they're in a serious catastrophe themselves. It's fair game to blast him on his record as a central banker of England, where they're not doing well because of him. Doing that, I would say the thing for Carney is that he's faced with this situation where he's looking at this economy in Canada, 10 years of no growth, zero growth, negative growth sometimes, and he's got to try and make it bounce back. You don't do that in a week or even a year. It takes some time to get it to happen. And not only did he inherit 10 years of dead economic growth from... That's not true. That's just not true. We see it in Argentina with Milei. He came in there and within months, he turned the country around, and it just gets better and better. It doesn't take a year to start seeing the inkling, oh, maybe I'll see a little bit of progress pop out from underneath that rock over there. No, that's not how it works. If you start doing good things, the country starts turning around right away. And not everything will turn around, obviously, but you'll see some indications of, oh, things are turning around. Because we've already seen it in Argentina. His predecessor, but he also inherited a trade war started by Donald Trump south of the border with our biggest trading partner. It isn't, I mean, it sounds like making excuses, except that it's not. It's the situation that he inherited and that he's trying to fix. And I'll tell you, if he can get out there and raise investment, build confidence in Canada, bring that money to build more mines, more LNG plants, more oil facilities in Canada, that's the job it takes. And it's not something you can do in a day. But I do think that's not what he's doing, though. He could be building a pipeline right now. The construction could be already on way, or at least the planning. He's not doing it. He won't do it. And to say he inherited the problems with America, he created the problems with America. He's been insulting the Americans since day one. Sure, some of the shimmer's going to come off. It always does. But by the end of 4 years, I think we will see, if we give him a chance, a Canada that is much renewed, with new partners around the world, with more jobs all across the country. That's, I think, he's looking at the bigger goal. I don't think he's sitting there saying, okay, what do my polls look like tomorrow? He wants to say after 4 years he's accomplished something, and we need to give him the time to do that.
I would take any bet on planet Earth that she is wrong, completely wrong on this. And the only thing that will prosper is anything tied to net zero. There is article after article that point out how bad Mark Carney was for the UK. Canada is about to discover Mark Carney is the man with the reverse Midas touch. Rockstar former governor of the Bank of England has left a trail of destruction behind his glossy jobs. Another example of an economy completely turning around is El Salvador. We've got Nayib Bukele, as it says here, single-handedly transformed the country from one of the world's most dangerous countries to one of the safest. All it takes is a good leader. You can change things around. It won't take Carney 4 years to finally see a couple new jobs pop up. Now I want to bring this clip back up because it's blowing up all over the place, the memes everywhere. I missed it the first time. He brings up a hockey analogy, but he says Conor McGregor instead of Conor McDavid.
Mr. Speaker, that Conservative leader and House leader questioning our Prime Minister's economic education and experience is like a third-line beer league hockey player questioning Conor McGregor's hockey skills.
Yeah, so I don't think Conor McGregor has very great hockey skills. We can see everyone posting these memes now. They're all over the place. Conor McGregor on the ice. Jumping over to committee, we've got this clip here of Jacob Bantle pressing Dominic LeBlanc here on trade with America. LeBlanc here looks pissed off. He sounds pissed off. The guy usually keeps his cool pretty well.
Open the door to a few questions on our Canada-U.S. relationship. So I wanted to ask you on that. Last week, Mr. Greer was at the Hudson Institute, and he said, quote, "We've worked really closely with the Mexicans over the past year, and they've resolved a lot of issues. The Canadians, we have some issues with them that haven't been resolved." And then the U.S. ambassador has said that there have been no substantive discussions in 5 months. So what are the issues that haven't been resolved, and why aren't we at the table?
So, Madam Chair, through you, I disagree with, I think, two premises of the question. We are at the table.
You disagree with Mr. Greer?
It was Mr. Greer said that. I think you were quoting the ambassador.
Mr. Greer says we have some issues with the Canadians that haven't been resolved. You disagree with him?
No, we're at the table. To part of your second
So you
later part of your
the
question.
ambassador?
We're at the table discussing those very issues with the Americans. I had a conversation with Secretary Lutnick early last week. My colleague Janice Charette, Ambassador Wiseman are at those tables discussing those very issues. I had a very cordial, productive conversation with Ambassador Greer about those issues.
What could you tell us what those issues are? I've got 4.
To finish, please, Mr. Mantle.
Pete Hoekstra just told us they're not at the table. Who are we going to believe, Dominic LeBlanc or Pete Hoekstra? I'm not trusting these guys.
I'd just like to know what those issues are. If you could maybe bullet point list for us, what are you don't have to go through all of them, maybe the top ones that are sticking points. I don't think we've had an update on what those are. And I've got 30 seconds left. Maybe you could just bullet point a few of the ones that are top.
So, no, I'm not going to bullet point the details of the specific conversations we're having. Ambassador
I didn't
Greer,
ask for that, Minister. I just said issues.
You asked for a list of bullet points a second ago.
Top issues, that's all.
Yeah. So you notice Ambassador Greer didn't enumerate them either. However, the U.S. Trade Representative's Office publishes something called the National Trades Estimates, where they have a series of non-tariff barriers that they believe apply to different jurisdictions. Canada has a list. That would be a good place for you to start. What the Americans say to us privately is often consistent with what they say publicly. You've seen the president, you've seen Secretary Lutnick, Ambassador Greer talk about these issues. We continue to remain engaged in conversations with them to resolve those issues. But I'll finish with this, Madam Chair. We're not prepared to deal with these things as a one-off. If we're going to resolve some of these issues that Ambassador Greer referred to, Canada is ready and willing to do that work.
But that's not what the ambassador just said, that they're not. And they're the ones who blew up the negotiations back in October. We should be asking Jameson Greer what the sticky points are. What are grievances here? We know it's going to be supply management. We ask them, they'll actually give us an answer. These liberals will never tell us anything.
Part of a deal, a larger agreement that brings relief to sectors of the Canadian economy that are under considerable pressure now and brings greater certainty around the USMCA or CUSMA review process. So we're not dealing with your point list as one-offs, but as part of a larger agreement. Canada is absolutely ready to do that work.
We're ready to do the work. More conversations. They're not doing anything. If you work in any of those sectors that are getting hammered, find a new job, go into a different industry. These guys are going to destroy those industries. The auto industry, steel, aluminum, autos, they're all getting trashed in our country. Jumping back to Pierre's speech he gave at the Toronto club, he brings up the happiness numbers in Canada. Our ranking keeps dropping.
These numbers are real lives. Canada's happiness ranking on the Global Happiness Index has gone from 5th in the world 10 years ago to 18th last year, and now we have risen to 25th under Mark Carney. What's worse is that among youth, we rank 71st. There are 70 countries in the world where young people are happier than young Canadians. And we're not just behind the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia, but we're now behind Kazakhstan, Vietnam, and Moldova. Young people in Kazakhstan are happier than young people in Canada. Something bad is happening here, and it's only getting worse. Now, we can take the comforting tranquilizer of blaming global factors for these problems. But all the other countries that we're falling behind face those same factors. They all face tariffs. They faced COVID, wars in Ukraine and Iran. Why is it that we're doing so much worse than all those other countries? Why is it that our economy is crumbling only here under this Liberal government? Now, it's also a comforting illusion to say that these are the problems created by the earlier Liberal government, but that they've learned and changed. That's what Mr. Carney promised in the last election. He promised that he would backtrack on everything he had said and written for 10 years and everything that his party had done in the previous decade. So what has changed? Really? Strip away the adjustments for style, image, ignore the speeches and the promises. What has really changed? If you asked a neutral and objective AI bot to go into all of the policies on the books of the Government of Canada, what would you find has actually changed in the last year? Deficits and spending are both higher, a lot higher. Taxes, they're about the same. Laws passed by Trudeau to block resource development and free criminals, all of them are still on the books. Those are the facts. Everything else is an illusion. Speaking of illusions, let us go through Mr. Carney's words and promises one by one. He promised to spend less and invest more. He's since doubled the deficit. He's increased federal spending by 7% above levels he inherited from Trudeau. Outside of COVID, government spending is, as a share of GDP, higher than it's been since 1996, and the deficit is the biggest in our country's history.
And of course, the Liberals just want us to say, Jinkua, very nice, as our happiness is now lower than Kazakhstan. Great success. Yeah, no. Yeah, and some of these comments saying, I mean, with unhappiness, then they bring in MAID to take care of the problem that they're creating.